As the guns fall silent in a proposed 30-day ceasefire, Ukraine and Russia stand at a crossroads. The world watches anxiously, wondering if this fragile peace will blossom into a lasting resolution or wither under the weight of unresolved tensions. And for more analysis, we are joined by Dr. Sallam, the Director of the Vision Center for Political Studies from Kyiv. Dr. Sallam, good morning and welcome to In-Depth. Let me ask you now that the United States has resumed the intelligence sharing and military aid to Ukraine. What are the implications of such a decision for the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war and for the Ukraine-US relations, which recently faced some hurdles?
Good morning to you and your dear viewers. Certainly, such a step has some sort of a symbolic step to regain the confidence between the White House and Ukraine. In addition, practically has some sort of steps for the Ukrainian army that would help them in this expose the military movement of the troops, their spots, as well as the supply pipelines that would assist the Ukrainian troops to confront the Russian offensive attacks.
Mm-hmm. Well, sir, now there were no specific security guarantees offered in the talks, but if they do get any concessions or guarantees, what might Ukraine get that it would seek? Like, what sort of guarantees can Ukraine seek from the US to ensure its security during such a potential and important ceasefire?
Certainly, the Russian invasion to Ukraine is ongoing for the last 3 years and heading for the fourth year. But the Russian aggression and hostility lasted for 11 years, and the Russian army never hide their intentions to occupy completely the Ukrainian territories, as they do not recognize the Ukrainian state and people. Therefore, the Ukrainian peoples and its authorities to pursue the security guarantees to prevent in the future any potential Russian invasion once again for Ukraine, regardless of the nature of the guarantees. But these guarantees could be through the joining the NATO or to establish military new political and military coalitions among the European countries, and has, according to information, preferably to have some sort of nuclear weapons or with the United States in a joint defense coalition. In the worst scenario, that Ukrainian may propose to regain the manufacturing of the nuclear weapons and to possess it. That would shape a deterrent for any external enemy that wish to invade the country once again.
Dr. Salama, I mean, speaking of a European Union role in the negotiations, is the nuclear option the only option for Ukraine, or how might European Union member states contribute to facilitating peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine other than the nuclear situation?
With respect to Europe and the European Union, Russia's posing a military and strategic threat, according to the strategic studies, along with intelligence that been exposed. Therefore, there are practically regain the process of arming in order to confront the Russian aggressions against the European countries. This is the first step. The second step, that they will support Ukraine politically and militarily, as we know that Ukraine is the eastern portal for Europe, and its collapse and the Russian occupation for Ukraine will pose a great threat for the European countries. And therefore, there might be some sort of have a military coalition, such as join Britain, France, and Poland that wish to support Ukraine and hold joint agreements that to stipulate the joint defense. That's similar to the fifth article of the NATO, but without the membership of Ukraine to the NATO. Therefore, there was a proposal by Italy, the Prime Minister Meloni, around the expansion of the scale of the covering of the NATO on the fifth article to include Ukraine, the territories that have never been occupied by the Russia, but without a full membership of Ukraine to NATO, which is a very good idea that could be addressed among the proposed ideas for the sake of supporting Ukraine. Let alone the United States that showed practically that is untrustworthy ally, not only for Ukraine, but for the joint Ukraine in the NATO. So we would expect the repositioning of militarily and strategically for these countries through their presence in the NATO.
Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, we're also now joined by Dr. Ashraf, the international political analyst from Cairo. Dr. Singh, welcome to In Depth. Sir, how might the recent US-Ukraine talks in Saudi Arabia influence Russia's willingness to engage in peace negotiations? They've been dubbing the situation as the ball is in Russia's court now. How do you assess Russia's willingness to engage in it?
The peace talk between Russia and Ukraine held in Saudi Arabia has been significant diplomatic developments amidst the ongoing war. You know why? Because in terms of the role of the Saudi Arabia in taking that role as a mediator between Russia and Ukraine, it's really backing by the support of the United States. You know, that kind of negotiation between the United States and Ukraine actually take the status quo for Europe, for NATO, for everybody in the globe. It seems to me like the United States does need to move further to get Russia more closer to the United States rather than to be closer to China. The point here is that the Ukraine war is representing, like a dispute or ongoing conflict between China and the United States. The United States is trying under Trump to redesigning international politics based on the new perspective, not really based on Biden's perspective. Biden, he had a plan to control the international system by increasing the role of NATO. But it seems to me like Trump is not really interested in giving NATO further power in terms of controlling the international system. This is first. Second, Zelensky, he had a discussion in the White House, last week with Donald Trump. It didn't go well. This is why Trump stopped any assistance or intelligence assistance to Ukraine in the current fighting now between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, Russia made a huge progress last 2 days in Corsican and other places. I think, peace is coming between Ukraine and Russia. That war didn't give any advantage for Russia and Ukraine. We understand, we understood long time ago that United States really was backing Ukraine to
Yes.
escalate with Russia. So this is instead the United States responsibility to make that peace under condition of the parties of Europe and Ukraine, not under condition of Russia only.
Dr. Salama, now Ukraine has requested the security guarantees from its allies. They expect security guarantees from the European Union, from the US, and you've mentioned that Europe would be also willing to support Ukraine militarily, along with the US supporting with the intelligence and security assistance. Do you think now with these sort of measures and the assurances, do you think that they will be able to withstand any Russian response in case they do not accept the ceasefire?
Certainly, the ceasefire and the cessation of the Russian invasion to Ukraine in the hands of Kremlin, and what Ukraine is doing along with its allies, along with the United States, to support Ukraine in self-defense. Therefore, any sort of support provided to Ukraine in the interest of Ukraine and contributing not for escalation of the war, but to support Ukraine and to prevent its fall and its full occupation. As I mentioned previously, such European support is a support and European self-defense. Therefore, we should go directly, practically, or the side should go directly to the Kremlin in order to impose the approval of the ceasefire as well as the Russian invasion to Ukraine. Up till now, it's not clear practically what is the official stance of the Kremlin regarding the initiatives of the US and Russia in the Jeddah talks of the ceasefire for 30 days. But unfortunately, the final intentions will be cleared out with regarding the Russian side, and from the other hand, what are the other pressures the White House could impose on the Russia to impose some sort of approval, or in case if there is no or they are refusing the ceasefire initiative.
Dr. Singer, let's assume that Russia does accept the ceasefire deal. Do you think that they will use this ceasefire deal to merely serve as a tactical pause for their side to regroup militarily, or do you think that there will be a true and honest motivation for Russian motivation for a lasting peace?
Yeah, one of the major problems in that talk in Saudi Arabia, that both of the Europe and Ukraine, they don't really trust, the Russia intentions. Of course, Donald Trump, he did mention many times, that is, Russia is coming, to make a real peace. But in terms of understanding, the position of Russia, of course, is still a middle power. Russia still has nuclear weapons that can really make the position of Russia in international politics pretty significant. So I can see that Trump, position to make that kind of mediation between the Russians and Ukraine and Saudi Arabia. It's really facing a huge challenge, particularly in that kind of shifting alliances, NATO rules, energy and trade, and minerals and that kind of potential agreement between Ukraine and the United States. So shifting alliances, this is really shaking Europe, particularly if you really need to think about the future of international cooperations, resolution, that we can really think what is the best resolution to resolve that conflict. Particularly, you need really major diplomatic victory, and from by United States. But keep in your mind that also Russia need to achieve major war victory, and this is not really easy to make that kind of influence of United States in that talk. Of course, Saudi Arabia is making a very neutral mediator, and that role has been a key in keeping that talk going in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Then, Dr. Singh,
kind of
what sort of key conditions Russia might demand for accepting the ceasefire?
Oh, this is a very good question. First of all, after I ran different models to understand what the future of Russia-Ukraine war, what really I found, it's really clear Russia needs to keep Crimea. No one can really talk about restoring Crimea back. Second, all the territories that Russia already occupied need to keep them all. Third, Ukraine shouldn't really join the NATO. It seems to me like Trump agreed on these conditions before even talking with Ukraine and Europe. So basically, what is really clear that Trump will impose, the United States or his preferences in Zelensky and Europeans to move more to achieve that kind of, achieve the goal of that peace. But for my point of view, it's still that condition of peace from Russia is not really convincing, Europe, because Europe is still, seeing Russia or watching, Russia movement is still a threat to Europe, and Poland and other countries. They are not really happy with that movement by United States to convince, Russia that can really make real peace. So still there is a huge doubt between Europeans and Russia before to talk about real or achieve peace between Ukraine and Russia. So still the United States does need to talk and work with Europe, but the timing of that talk with Europe is not really right time after Trump, mentioned about the Greenland and Denmark.
Dr. Ashraf Singh, the international political analyst, and Dr. Sallam, the director of the Vision Center for Political Studies. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us.